Something about this case doesn't add up. 2 children vanish in broad daylight. Pieces of a pink blanket surface miles apart. Timelines blur. Statements shift. And at the center of it all, a mother the public can't stop talking about. Tonight, we're asking the question everyone's afraid to say out loud. What does Malaya Brooks-Murray know about the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan? This is an accusation. It's investigation. Let's unravel what's fact, what's rumor, and what might still be hidden. May 2nd, 2025. Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. What began as an ordinary spring morning would soon become the center of one of Canada's most unsettling mysteries. At 8:17 a.m., a frantic 911 call shattered the quiet. 2 children, Lily Sullivan, age 6, and her little brother Jack, just 4, were missing. Their mother's trembling voice carried panic through the line as she described an open door, empty bedrooms, and no sign of her kids anywhere on the property. Within minutes, RCMP cruisers descended on the family's rural home, a modest property tucked behind a tree line at the edge of town. Sirens cut through the morning fog as uniformed officers spread out across the gravel drive. Helicopters began sweeping overhead, scanning the fields and nearby forest canopy. 9 units were deployed, noses to the ground, tracing faint scents through the tall grass. Dozens of volunteers, neighbors, friends, even strangers, joined the search, moving methodically through brush and ditches, calling out the children's names. But as the hours passed, hope began to blur into disbelief. There were no small footprints leading into the woods, no signs of a struggle, no vehicle tracks leaving the driveway. It was as if Lilly and Jack had simply vanished into thin air. The silence around the Sullivan property grew heavier with every passing minute, broken only by the whir of helicopter blades overhead and the distant crackle of police radios. That's when investigators began piecing together the morning step by step. They retraced every moment. When the children were last seen, what they had been wearing, and who had been home at the time. But as the timeline took shape, cracks began to appear. Details conflicted. Some recollections didn't match. The exact time the children were last accounted for seemed to shift with every retelling. And in a case where minutes could mean everything, that confusion was more than troubling. It was the first sign that something about this disappearance didn't add up. Court documents released months later shed new light on the morning of May 2nd, and with that light came more shadows. The reports confirmed what many had quietly suspected. There were inconsistencies in the family's accounts of what happened before the 911 call. Investigators had pressed hard on one key question. What time did Malaya, the children's mother, first realize that Lily and Jack were missing? Some statements suggested it was early, just after sunrise. Others placed the moment closer to mid-morning. Those few missing minutes, perhaps even an hour, became a critical gap in the investigation. Then came the second question. When exactly did she call police? The RCMP's dispatch record were precise, but some notes from the family didn't align. The time stamps didn't match up perfectly with what was said in interviews. It might have been an innocent mix-up, the chaos of panic. But in a case like this, inconsistencies can change everything. The mystery deepened when parts of the official documents were released to the public. Certain times, names, and even sections of phone log data have been blacked out, redacted entirely. To the RCMP, it was likely a matter of protecting the integrity of an ongoing investigation. But to the public, it looked like something was being hidden. And that's when the speculation took over. Online forums and amateur sleuths began dissecting every blacked-out line. Theories flooded in, some rational, others wild. Was Malaya protecting someone? Maybe Daniel Martel, her partner, and the children's stepfather? Or was she hiding something about her own actions that morning? Every unanswered question became fuel for rumor. Still, the RCMP held their ground, refusing to confirm or deny any theory. In official statements, they reminded the public that no scenario had been ruled out. Abduction, accidental wandering, foul play, or even something no one had yet considered. Behind the silence, investigators were still chasing leads. But to the outside world, the mystery of Lilly and Jack Sullivan only grew darker and more tangled with every passing revelation. A few days into the search, just when volunteers were beginning to feel the chill of unanswered hope, the discovery came like a jolt. A small, torn fragment of a pink blanket snagged high in the crook of a tree, almost a kilometer from the Sullivan house. It wasn't just a distance that startled people. It was the image, a child's comfort item, fluttering among bare branches, out of place and impossibly alone. Word spread fast. Teams who had been following tracks and calling names converged on the spot. And within hours, another fragment turned up much closer to home. Not in the woods, but inside a garbage bag, abandoned at the edge of the driveway. Family members identified the fabric without hesitation. It had belonged to Lilly. Those two pieces, found in such different settings, forced everyone to shift how they imagined what happened that morning. A torn blanket caught high in a tree invites one set of possibilities. A frantic struggle, a hurried climb, the accidental snag of a blanket as someone ran. But a fragment tucked into a garbage bag at the drive suggests something else entirely. Concealment, staging, or at least a level of intent. Which one was it? Torn by weather and time? Or deliberately placed to mislead searchers and investigators? The questions multiplied faster than answers. Investigators treated the fabric as a critical lead. Forensics cataloged the pieces, photographed their positions in situ, and bagged them for analysis, hoping microscopic fibers, soil, or other trace evidence could anchor the scene to a person, a vehicle, or a sequence of events. Search coordinators pulled teams back together and reevaluated their grid patterns. Areas once thought clear were rechecked. For the volunteer searchers, the neighbors trudging through marsh and brush, the ones who had held vigils and kept watch at the road, the tone of the operation shifted quietly but irrevocably. Where there had been a rush of optimism that the children might still be found alive, a more somber mood took hold. Planning for recovery, not rescue. Emotion ran raw. Parents who had come to help found themselves staring at a piece of pink cloth and feeling the weight of impossible absence. Rumors spread in the gaps between official updates. Theories about wind, wildlife, strangers, or stage scenes. The RCMP, careful in public, called for patience and caution against drawing conclusions from partial evidence. But on the ground, amid stamped footprints and whispered prayers, the two fragments of Lily's blanket changed the search's heartbeat, turning frantic hope into a steadier, grimmer determination to follow the trail wherever it led. As the days bled into weeks, the desperate search for Lilly and Jack began to morph into something else. Not just a hunt for clues, but a scrutiny of those left behind. Slowly, the spotlight shifted toward their mother, Malaya Brooks-Murray. The woman who had once been seen as a grieving parent now found herself standing in the uncomfortable glare of public suspicion. Her interviews, first calm and carefully worded, then emotional and at times sharply defensive, became a focus of analysis for both journalists and online audiences. Every change in tone, every blink, every tremor in her voice was replayed and pulled apart, as though the truth might be hiding somewhere between her words. At the urging of investigators, Malaya agreed to take a polygraph test, a decision that both humanized her and raised more questions. The RCMP later confirmed that her responses were truthful on certain key questions, but the specifics of those questions were redacted from the released documents. That secrecy only added fuel to speculation. What exactly had she been asked? Did those truthful responses absolve her, or were they carefully worded enough to leave room for doubt? For a community desperate for answers, silence and redaction often speak louder than official statements. Meanwhile, the internet became a courtroom of its own. On Reddit threads, Facebook groups, and TikTok clips, armchair detectives pored over Malaya's every appearance. They replayed her television interviews, noted her choice of words, and obsessed over the posts she deleted in the early days of the investigation. Some accused her of hiding guilt. Others defended her fiercely, pointing to the exhaustion and trauma visible in her demeanor. Through it all, the RCMP remained publicly cautious. In every press conference, they reminded reporters that no one had been charged or officially named a suspect. The investigation, they insisted, was still wide open, and until tangible evidence pointed in one direction, the focus would remain on facts, not feelings. But for the public, reason had already blurred into speculation. Every unanswered question became another thread to tug on, and every emotional reaction, whether calm or chaotic, was seen as potential proof of something darker. In a case defined by silence, even the way someone breathed on camera became a clue. And still, Behind the thick black lines of those redacted court pages, there may be answers the public hasn't seen, fragments of a truth too sensitive or too incomplete to release. Whether they conceal crucial evidence or simply protect privacy, no one outside the investigation knows for sure. As of today, Lilly and Jack Sullivan remain missing. The RCMP insists the case is active, with investigators continuing to follow new leads as they surface. Yet, for the small community of Pictou County, life has never returned to normal.